Hi, I'm Pablo Peixoto. I'm an associate professor of biology at City University of New York. We have, I think, 24 campuses from CUNY, and we don't get to interact a lot, even though we are in the same city, and I end up interacting with people with like-minded interests. My specialty is neuroscience. I study mitochondrial metabolism. In that capacity, I involve students in researching in my laboratory. But when I got the job now 10 years ago, I was also given a grant to introduce research into the classroom, and I have been doing that at the introductory biology level. I also work as campus coordinator of the LSAMP program. We've been recruiting students, first-year students, to get their foot into a research opportunity. We pair them with different programs and potential research mentors across the city. Another way that I involve students is as Dean's Fellow of the grassroots movement that we started at my college that we call the DEI Alliance across 13 departments. There's a group that we started 5 years ago that is flourishing, which is centered on student success. And the theme of this year is to harness the HSI designation that we just achieved to build capacity for research. That research and experiential learning are the actual transformative ways of learning something. That is what shaped my career trajectory. Somebody opened the doors to undergraduate research for me back in the day. It got me to major in an area that I never fathomed. It opened horizons that I didn't even know they were available to me. I grew up in a cycle of poverty back in Brazil and never imagined, for example, getting a PhD in Europe or becoming a professor in a university in the United States. And that all started because somebody opened the doors to undergraduate research. So I think that that's, in my own trajectory, in my own history, was the most impactful experience that I've had. I became involved in undergraduate research in my second semester, and it was a time where I thought that I needed to be more senior. I thought that I didn't have the qualifications to dare holding a pipette or asking a research question. And we had a program like that in Brazil where they wanted to expose students as soon in their career as possible to this experiential learning opportunities. I joined the lab. I remember my mentor back in the day was a returning professor doing a postdoctoral fellowship in the United States. I saw there an opportunity, somebody coming, starting a lab. When I heard of that, I went and knocked on the door. They were very receptive to that. In Brazil, you do an honors thesis. It's mandatory. To graduate, you have to do an honors thesis. And at the end, I stumbled into a exchange program opportunity to go to Spain. That's how I connected with Europe for grad school. And I remember seeing this little blurb at the Office of International Studies. It said, mitochondrial electrophysiology in the city of Cáceres. And I thought that that term sounded scary to me, mitochondrial electrophysiology. And I thought that when you think of Spain, you think Barcelona, Madrid, Seville, Cáceres. I have relatives who think that I went to Brazil for my PhD because we have a city called Cáceres there. I saw there an opportunity that seemed scary to me, and I imagine that it would be scary for other people as well. I probably was the only one who applied. And I think that now being able to see students that look like me, to identify myself with them, with that trajectory that I see like a commonality to, but also a lot of differences, challenges that are different from the ones that I had back in the day, and realizing that I have some capacity to help students through those challenges. They are now unique to them. I think it's a privilege, and to be able to be exposed to that and to learn with them too. The challenges in my institution are unique because Baruch College it's a business school. We have a pre-health program or STEM program. As I mentioned, we just achieved the HSI designation and we have a very diverse student body, but I've seen that when it comes to STEM, that diversity tends to disappear. We have institutional barriers that segregate against that student population. One of the challenges that we have is that the students coming to a business major, they're doing so because they see that as a short-term way out of poverty or a short-term possibility of social mobility. And they don't see that in STEM, or they think that that's going to be at a more longer term and they need immediate stuff. The major challenge for me is to shift their perspective about the length that it will take for them to be rewarded for their work. I grew up thinking that, or in a time where to be in research, you needed to be a volunteer. You needed to sacrifice time, sacrifice maybe your work to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And with that, you lose the sense of self-worth. Students in my lab, if they work there doing research, they do so for credit and for money. I think that it's important to build your identity from the get-go if you see that there is actual monetary value in the work that you're doing and that you become compensated for that and the structure grows. We tend to think of students and trainees and interns as people who are just so eager to learn and that they are so lucky to be there in this environment where we can provide them with this. I see the other side of it. I am very lucky to be able to bring the diverse perspectives, the innovative ideas, the naive questions that I'm not able to ask anymore and that my students are. They have a lot to contribute to my career, to my research. It's a two-way thing. I see the value of that, and that is why I'm like a big proponent of putting money where our mouths are. And I see things like this continuing to happen if we don't stop here, if we amplify the hub, if we start other initiatives that sprouted out of here, broadening the impacts of something that you started doing earlier, and recognizing the evolution of that impact. That's incredibly important also because it's starting to shift the landscape. There is a lot of discouraging statistical information that we've had from the past in terms of how much segregation do we do in different STEM fields when it comes to socioeconomic background, ethnic, religious. And we spent a day yesterday basically talking about intersectionality, which we used to hide rather than see the value and try to support. We used to think of a Hispanic student as a Hispanic student, and that checks a box and attracts funds when we need that. But we also frame that as a special needs student. And then if the Hispanic student happens to have a learning disability or a gender diversity that we're not talking about, or religious diversity, or other features that make them a wholesome person, the intersectionality, we used to see that as additional needs rather than additional value, additional strengths that they can bring. So this came from the hub in my experience. This is the first time that I had like an in-depth conversation about intersectionality. I'm going home very inspired, energized, and ready to sleeve up. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity.